Donald Trump has proven every single day that he's been the Republican nominee, and when he's been Republican president and when he's been running this year, that he's categorically unfit for office. This is somebody who committed an insurrection against our government. This is a 34-time convicted felon who is also found liable of sexual abuse. And I think when voters go to the polls on Tuesday, they're going to look at their ballot and they're going to see Kamala Harris and they're going to see Donald Trump. And when they look at Donald Trump, they're going to be reminded of all of these reasons why he's off-putting, all of the reasons why he's unfit for office.
Robert Nix and John Conway, thank you both very much for joining us tonight. Let me ask you, first of all, Robert, you're a former Trump voter. Um, at what stage or what was the moment that you decided that you could no longer support him?
Well, I never was a big supporter. I was a Republican all my life since 1980. I registered to vote for Ronald Reagan in 1980 and I voted for a Republican every year since then. So in 2016, I thought, well, the choice is between Clinton and Trump. I wasn't a supporter of Trump, but I couldn't believe he got the nomination. I was flabbergasted, but I thought, well, I'm a Republican and give him a chance. And what could go wrong? He's got adults in the room. He's got guardrails. There's all these guardrails and adults. And I thought, what could go wrong? And I quickly realized early in 2017 that there was going to be a problem. He seemed to be undermining the Constitution, seemed to be actively wanting to avoid all accountability on which our entire Constitution is based, checks and balances, the rule of law, denigrating the press, the free press, so all of that sent warning signs right away. So by the time 2020 came along, I knew I couldn't vote for him a second time.
And John, what prompted you to form this group, Republicans Against Trump? I mean, he's your party's nominee. He got that nomination by pretty fair and square means.
Yeah, we started Republican Voters Against Trump ahead of the 2020 presidential election in order to try and defeat him in that election. We were very successful with Joe Biden's victory in 2020, and we decided in 2024 we once again had to launch this campaign because we know folks like Robert, a former Trump voter who's identified as Republican all their life, is the most persuasive messenger to make the case against the second Trump presidency, because Robert can speak directly to the same voters who are on the fence in states like Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin. He can say, look, I voted for the guy in the past, like you have been a Republican all my life, but I have to support Kamala Harris because Donald Trump is categorically unfit to be in office again. So we know messengers like Robert are the most persuasive with the key swing voters that are ultimately going to decide this election. And, you know, we've been incredibly successful at finding hundreds of folks, not only Robert, but across the country, in all 50 states. We've found volunteers to tell their stories, to speak up, even though they're Republicans.
Robert, are you not, as somebody who describes yourself as a lifelong Republican supporter and voter, are you not concerned at some of Kamala Harris's policies, her platform, her program for government?
Well, I do, but I think we're beyond worrying about individual issues. I paraphrase Liz Cheney when she said we can get by with bad policy, we can survive it, but we can't survive the trampling of our Constitution and the undermining of our form of government. And I think that sort of transcends any issues like abortion or Israel or inflation or things like that. We can get by. We can, even if I don't agree with her, even if I had to hold my nose like I did in 2020 to vote for Biden, and we're still. It is bigger. It is a much bigger danger that we're facing than any issue that I may or may not agree with in a Harris administration.
Throughout this campaign, Donald Trump has faced a series of court cases, a series of controversies that could well have stopped any other candidate, but he seems to simply rise above them. We've had a huge fuss about the Madison Square Gardens rally, where some of the warm up acts told supposed jokes that were blatantly racist. But Donald Trump has said, well, I don't know anything about that. And it doesn't seem to have damaged his standing, even with Latino voters.
Well, I'm here in Pennsylvania, and there's a huge Puerto Rican population here. I was involved with Hispanic outreach for the Republican Party 20 years ago. I worked with Bush Cheney on Hispanic outreach, and with Senator Santorum and Arlen Specter, and I worked with the Republican State Committee. The party has changed so much since then that here I am now, and I'm not the one that changed, and I'm one of the faces of Republican voters against Trump. But I would say to that I am sensing a lot of anger. Well, maybe not of people that have already decided, but there's plenty of Latino vote in Pennsylvania that would never have voted, wouldn't have voted in this election at all, and now they're angered. So that maybe people weren't planning to vote are now going to vote against Trump because of anger of that. So that might be something. And in a state like Pennsylvania where it's this close, and that difference of tens of thousands could make a big difference.
So just to be clear, John Conway, you're saying that those remarks about Puerto Ricans, you think that could have an effect on some of those key voters in one of the key swing states?
Yeah, I think Robert's analysis is exactly right. In a state like Pennsylvania, we know it's going to be decided by tens of thousands of votes. And the closing message from the Trump campaign is reminding voters what they dislike about Trump, which is that Trump is hateful. Trump brings people into the party who want to cause division, who don't respect all Americans. And so the comments at Madison Square Garden are a reminder of all the reasons why voters like Robert rejected Donald Trump in 2020, why voters in 2024 who are still undecided because they can't get there on Donald Trump. After 8 years of watching Donald Trump, they aren't sold yet. And they aren't sold because of exactly what they saw at Trump's rally, his divisiveness, the type of politics that he's fostered in this country. And so for Trump's closing message to be headlined by these racist remarks, by these bigoted remarks, it could make a difference for those few thousand voters on the fence, not only in the Puerto Rican community, which makes up half of the Latino population in Pennsylvania, but for other voters who are on the fence who are really questioning, do I want to live through another 4 years of Donald Trump's administration? And the answer, I think, is going to be no.
But those remarks from Joe Biden today, which were taken by many to be him suggesting that supporters of Donald Trump were garbage, although Biden has been insisting that he was talking about the particular comedian at that Madison Square Valley, at that Madison Square Gardens rally. Aren't you worried that Joe Biden's comments there have meant that it's the Democrats who are likely to be damaged by this episode?
No, I don't think so. I think Joe Biden made the honorable decision to not run for the nomination this year. And I think voters have Kamala Harris and Donald Trump at the top of their heads right now. And the comments made by Joe Biden, which I do believe were taken out of context. I do believe he was referring directly to the comments that comedian Tony Hinchcliffe made. Regardless, voters are going to go into the voting booth on Tuesday, and they're going to make a choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, not Joe Biden.
The race looks very close indeed, although Kamala Harris has a slight lead in the overall vote share. It doesn't look as though she's got a comfortable enough lead in those key swing states to be anything like confident of victory. Robert, are you concerned about what could happen if there is a very tight result? If, for example, it's so close that Republicans, that Donald Trump refuses to accept the result?
Oh, absolutely. We saw already the trial run for this after 2020. Not only did he perpetrate the big lie that has absolutely undermined confidence in our entire electoral system, but then he instigated an insurrection, which is also undermined confidence in our one of the key points of our entire government, which is the peaceful transfer of power. And all of that was just the beginning. That was their amateur attempt. I think they've had 4 years to sort of plan that they're going to do anything possible post November 5th to try to make this come their way, and they've had Steve Bannon was the architect of all this type of getting people at the local levels, at the state levels, all these Trump supporters into positions in secretaries of states and key election officials, and now they're going to try to use that here afterward. I don't think it's anywhere near over November 5th. I'm really worried for our country. I'm really worried what comes next. I don't think anybody can celebrate anything on November 5th, and that we're we're going to be fighting this ugly far right ultra-nationalist movement, which isn't even really a Republican Party anymore, for the balance of the 2020s. I'm really concerned about that.
John Conway, do you think, despite all that you and Robert have told us tonight, and of course we do talk to pro-Trump Republicans as well, that Donald Trump is heading for another term in the White House?
No, I don't. I think there are millions of Republicans across the country, folks like Robert, folks beyond Robert who voted for Donald Trump in 2020, who saw the consequences of his election lies, who are going to vote for Kamala Harris because they're going to put country over party this year. I think Donald Trump has proven every single day that he's been the Republican nominee, and when he's been Republican president, and when he's been running this year, that he's categorically unfit for office. This is somebody who committed an insurrection against our government. This is a 34-time convicted felon who is also found liable of sexual abuse. And I think when voters go to the polls on Tuesday, they're going to look at their ballot and they're going to see Kamala Harris and they're going to see Donald Trump. And when they look at Donald Trump, they're going to be reminded of all of these reasons why he's off-putting, all of the reasons why he's unfit for office. And they might look at Kamala Harris, like Robert said, and say, I don't agree 100% with everything she stands for, but I know she's going to protect our Constitution. They know that she's going to protect our country, and they're going to know that Kamala Harris truly believes in the American experiment, and Donald Trump doesn't. And I think ultimately those late-breaking undecideds who walk into the voting booth, still not sure who they're going to vote for, are going to circle in Kamala Harris's name this November.
John Conway and Robert Nix, thank you both very much indeed.